For these reasons, contracting parties that have mangrove ecosystems in their territories are requested to review and, where appropriate, modify their national policies and strategies that may have harmful effects on those ecosystems, and apply measures to protect and restore their ecosystems. Values and functions for human populations, recognizing their rights, traditional uses and customs, and the maintenance of biodiversity, and collaborate at the international level to agree on regional and global strategies for their protection. Contracting parties with mangrove ecosystems are also requested to promote their conservation, integrated management and sustainable use, in the context of national policies and regulatory frameworks, and in accordance with environmental and strategic assessments of activities that may directly affect or indirectly to the structure and function of mangrove ecosystems. Urging the member countries to update their information on the coverage of mangrove ecosystems and their conservation status, as well as the forms and levels of their use. In July 2006, the United Nations Environment Programme, through the Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean, published the press release entitled "The Threat of Climate Change for the Mangroves of the Pacific Ocean." Strategies that face mangroves in coastal zones indicated in the new UNEP report. They express the need to act to conserve mangroves in the Pacific amid concerns that rising ocean levels, linked to climate change, are destined to submerge large areas of these beautiful and economically important ecosystems. The report also provides elements of site-specific strategies that coastal zone managers can implement to minimize and offset anticipated mangrove losses from the effects of climate change. This focuses on community perspectives and comprehensive coastal zone management, as well as increasing public awareness and scope. Tropico Verde published in 2006 a report entitled "The Mangrove of Guatemala is still threatened," where it is stated that our mangroves have suffered great alterations since the mid-1950s. First agriculture, then cattle ranching, and later the shrimp and tourist industry in disarray, they have contributed to this ecosystem being among the most threatened in the country. Indicating with this that the situation is worrying and makes one fear that, if a stop is not made, in the next decade the mangrove will be extinct on the Guatemalan coasts. This report indicates that the 254 kilometers long coastline of the Pacific coast of Guatemala has suffered in a few years the loss of most of the mangroves that occupied it. Between 1950 and 1965, more than half of the existing mangroves were cut down due to the expansion of the cotton industry, which caused irrecoverable soil degradation. Later, when this culture began to decline, the remaining mangrove lands were used to install ponds for salt flats and for shrimp farming. The Guatemalan mangrove swamp is today on the brink of disappearance, and the economic model that is being imposed without the participation of all citizens represents one more risk. In January 2006, the National Council of Protected Areas (CONAP) published the National Policy of Wetlands of Guatemala, in which it recognizes the ecological, economic and social value of wetlands including mangrove ecosystems, and is aware of the state of deterioration and degradation of the ecosystems that contain them, formulates this policy, which contains a comprehensive framework and guidelines to promote social, economic and ecological development in the country. This document represents an orientation for society in general and public and private sector decision-makers with the objective of conserving and rationally using wetlands and complying with the commitments acquired by the state in terms of environmental protection and human development. In 2007, Garcia published the final report of the research project entitled "Economic Valuation and Natural Ordering of the Modeling of the Marine Coastal Wetland Complex between the Municipality of Iztapa, Escuintla, and the Aldea La Candelaria, Taxisco, Santa Rosa for the purposes of sustainable use." Identifying as main activities of use and extraction of hydrobiological resources, fishing activity for sale and own consumption, the use of mangrove resources for construction purposes, and firewood, use of water resources for domestic, tourist and transportation purposes. And pointing out as the main threats and sources of pressure the immoderate logging of the mangrove resource, the contamination of the water by domestic waste and mainly by agricultural activities such as the cultivation of sugarcane, the latter indicated as the main source of water contamination. He concludes that the mangrove in this complex of wetlands has a potential value of 35,463,750 quetzales in terms of firewood, which would be the same value that would be lost if the mangrove is finished, under this concept. This work shows the need to follow up the research works that promote the conservation of this ecosystem and, above all, the responsible management and handling of the natural resources found in it.